Can you come get me, please? Tristan froze. His grip tightened around the phone as he leaned back in his chair, his mind scrambling for context. Wrong number, clearly. He didn't have a son. He would have known, wouldn't he? This has to be a mistake, Tristan replied firmly, though unease twisted in his stomach. I don't know who you think I am, but... You're Tristan Ellis! The boy interrupted quickly, as if afraid Tristan might hang up. You're my dad. My mum told me. Tristan's breath caught. His name. How could this child possibly know his name? His mind raced through plausible explanations. A scam? A coincidence? But no, the boy sounded too earnest, too desperate. What's your name? Tristan asked, sharper than he intended. Leo, the boy answered. Leo Santos. My mum's name was Helena Santos. You knew her. He hesitated, as though the words weighed heavily on him. The name hit Tristan like a punch to the gut. Helena. He hadn't thought about her in years. Hadn't let himself. Imagina vivir cada día sintiendo que caminas precariamente sobre una cuerda floja, luchando desesperadamente por no caer en el caos que se extiende debajo. Ese es el agotador peso emocional y mental que viene con tratar a alguien que parece incapaz de reconocer tu perspectiva. Alguien que tal vez invalide constantemente tus sentimientos o menosprecie tus pensamientos. Es agotador, ¿verdad? Pero ¿y si te dijera que existe una manera de navegar estas interacciones sin perder tu esencia en el proceso? Un camino que te permita mantener el equilibrio y preservar tu paz interior, sin importar cuán difícil sea la persona frente a ti. Ese camino está en la filosofía estoica y hoy compartiré cómo puedes comunicarte eficazmente con personalidades desafiantes sin sucumbir a su manipulación ni sacrificar tu sentido de identidad. Exploraremos estrategias inspiradas en el estoicismo que podrían ahorrarte tiempo, energía emocional y hasta redefinir los límites en tus relaciones para mejorarlas. Es The city buzzed below, a restless tide of humanity. But inside Tristan's penthouse, the air was heavy with silence. His mind churned like an ocean caught in a storm, thoughts crashing against emotions, neither willing to yield. Finally, he spoke into the phone, his voice barely audible, as though even speaking required too much effort. I'll call you back, he murmured, hanging up before Leo could respond. The weight of the conversation pressed down on him, suffocating and unrelenting, like being buried under a mountain of lead. For the first time in years, Tristan felt utterly adrift. He stared at the sleek device on his desk, half expecting it to spring to life and replay the boy's voice that now echoed relentlessly in his mind. She told me you'd help me if I ever needed you. His hand hovered over the phone for a moment before snatching it up decisively. He dialed quickly, his tone brisk when Angela answered. Trace this number, he ordered, rattling off the digits Leo had called. The city buzzed below, a restless tide of humanity. But inside Tristan's penthouse, the air was heavy with silence. His mind churned like an ocean caught in a storm, thoughts crashing against emotions, neither willing to yield. Finally, he spoke into the phone, his voice barely audible, as though even speaking required too much effort. I'll call you back, he murmured, hanging up before Leo could respond. The weight of the conversation pressed down on him, suffocating and unrelenting, like being buried under a mountain of lead. For the first time in years, Tristan felt utterly adrift. He stared at the sleek device on his desk, half expecting it to spring to life and replay the boy's voice that now echoed relentlessly in his mind. She told me you'd help me if I ever needed you. His hand hovered over the phone for a moment before snatching it up decisively. He dialed quickly, his tone brisk when Angela answered. "Trace this number," he ordered, rattling off the digits Leo had called. "I spoke with someone there. The boy's name is Leo Santos. He's been staying there for a few months. His mother passed away recently, cancer." Tristan's stomach twisted. The confirmation hit him like a hammer blow, shattering the fragile barrier of disbelief he clung to. "Thank you," he said tersely, ending the call before Angela could ask any follow-up questions. For a long moment, he sat motionless, staring out at the glittering skyline. Memories of Helena swirled in his mind. Vivid and unwelcome, he remembered her final words to him before he left Porto Alra. "I won't ask for anything. You have your world, and I have mine. Let's not make this harder than it has to be." At the time, he'd admired her strength, her refusal to cling to something that had no future. Now, he wondered if her independence had kept her from reaching out when she needed to. He poured himself a drink, watching the amber liquid swirl in the glass. Tristan Ellis. Master of the universe, reduced to second guess. He sat motionless in the sterile quiet of his penthouse, staring at the sleek phone on his desk, as if willing it to summon the boy's voice again. The words echoed in his mind, replaying relentlessly. "She told me you'd help me if I ever needed you." His hand hovered uncertainly over the device for a moment, before he snatched it up and dialed his assistant, Angela. "I need you to trace a number," he barked, rattling off the digits Leo had called from. Angela didn't ask questions. She never did. That's why Tristan valued her. She was efficient, loyal, and as close to a confidant as he allowed anyone to be. "I'll get on it right away," she replied, her tone calm and professional as always. Tristan ended the call and slumped back into his chair, rubbing his temples. His mind was a battlefield, logic warring against something deeper, quieter, and far more unwelcome. This had to be absurd, a scam, a coincidence. That another part of him whispered that it wasn't impossible. The boy knew too much. Standing perfectly still, his cane resting gently on the ground, his blind eyes fixed straight ahead, he stood there, calm amidst the chaos. The scuff of boots against the floor, the clinking of handcuffs, and the grunts of protest from Axel's men filled the air as they were subdued one by one. Suddenly, Ruiz's powerful voice cut through the commotion as he stepped into the house, his presence alone commanding instant silence. "Everyone is under arrest," he declared firmly, his gaze sweeping across the room. His eyes landed on Eli, and he gave a slight nod. Eli turned his head toward Ruiz's voice. "Axel is yours," he said evenly. Ruiz glanced at Axel, who was being forced to his feet by two officers, hands cuffed tightly behind his back. A trickle of blood ran down from a gash on his temple, his face twisted with rage. "It's over, Axel," Ruiz stated in a tone both firm and unyielding. "This neighborhood no longer belongs to you." Axel growled, thrashing violently, but the officers. Leo's words still echoed in his mind, burrowing deeper with each passing second. "She told me you'd help me if I ever needed you." Tristan's hand hovered over the phone for a moment, trembling slightly, before he snatched it up and dialed his assistant, Angela. "I need you to trace a number," he barked, rattling off the digits Leo had called from. Angela didn't ask questions. She never did. That's why she was indispensable. Efficient, loyal, and as close to a confidant as Tristan allowed anyone to be. "I'll get on it right away," she replied calmly, her tone betraying nothing. He ended the call and slumped back into his chair, rubbing his temples. His mind churned like a storm-tossed sea, logic battling emotion. This had to be absurd, a scam, a coincidence. But another part of him, quieter yet insistent, whispered that it wasn't impossible. The boy knew too much, too many details. His name, Helena's name. Even fragments of their time together. Helena. Just thinking her name brought her far. "Thank you," he muttered, ending the call before Angela could ask any follow-up questions. For a long moment, he sat motionless, staring out at the glittering skyline. Memories of Helena swirled in his mind, vivid and painful. He remembered how she challenged him, called him out on his arrogance, and most of all, insisted that their lives were incompatible. She'd been right, of course. Tristan had been too consumed by his ambitions to imagine a life outside quarterly earnings and boardroom victories. But had she really kept something like this from him? It didn't seem like her. Helena had always been honest, even when the truth was uncomfortable. If she'd known she was pregnant, surely she would have told him, wouldn't she? Tristan shook his head, trying to dispel the fog of doubt clouding his thoughts. None of this added up. It couldn't. And yet, Leo's voice, his desperation, lingered in Tristan's mind like a ghost refusing to be exorcised. He stood abruptly, grabbing his coat. He knew. Every morning, he felt a pang of something he couldn't quite identify. Guilt, maybe, or the faint stirrings of responsibility. The boy in the photo wasn't just a name or a voice on the other end of the line. He was real. Tristan leaned back in his chair, the weight of the report pressing down on him. He was a man who thrived on certainty, on having all the facts and using them to make calculated decisions. But this situation defied logic. It wasn't a deal to be negotiated or a problem to be solved with money. It was messy, personal, and utterly foreign to him. And yet, he couldn't ignore it. He closed the report, his decision made. He didn't know what he would find when he met Leo, but he couldn't walk away without knowing the truth. Tristan sat in his office, late into the evening. The photo of Leo still open on his desk. His mind churned with questions, doubts, and the faint but persistent tug of responsibility. He had spent his entire life compartmentalizing his emotions, sealing them away behind an impenitent. The words lingered in the air, heavy and unrelenting. Tristan felt something shift inside him, a crack forming in the armor he had spent years perfecting. He thought about Helena, the strength it must have taken for her to raise Leo on her own, and the courage it must have required for Leo to pick up the phone and call a man he'd never met. Tristan exhaled slowly, his decision made. "Stay where you are," he said firmly, though his voice betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. I'll figure something out." "You will?" Leo's voice brightened, hope breaking through the exhaustion like sunlight piercing a storm cloud. "Yes," Tristan replied, though the words tasted foreign on his tongue. "I'll call you soon. Just stay safe, okay?" "Okay," Leo whispered, gratitude softening his tone. "Thank you." The line went dead, but Tristan remained still, the phone pressed to his ear as if holding onto the connection just a little longer. For the first time in years, he felt uncertain, vulnerable, painful. The idea of a child, possibly his child, enduring such hardship was unbearable. "What about the father?" Tristan asked, though the question felt hollow. "There's no mention of a father on any official documents," Michael replied. "Helena never listed anyone on Leo's birth certificate. But I found a few personal effects she left behind. Among them were photos, one of you and her together, and a few of her with Leo. Looks like she kept them in a box with some letters." Tristan's throat tightened. "Letters? Yeah, I couldn't read them. They're in Portuguese, but I can have them translated if you want. Tristan didn't respond immediately. The mention of letters and photos felt too intimate, too raw. He cleared his throat. That won't be necessary. Michael paused, then added, "For what it's worth, Tristan, I think the boy is telling the truth. Everything lines up." Tristan ended the call with a curt "thank you" and set the phone down. He stared out the window at the city skyline, his mind "Stay where you are," he said firmly into the phone. "I'll figure something out." "You will?" Leo's voice brightened, a flicker of hope cutting through the exhaustion. "Yes," Tristan replied, though the words tasted foreign on his tongue. "I'll call you soon. Just stay safe, okay?" "Thank you," Leo whispered before the line went dead. Tristan sat there, the phone still pressed to his ear, as silence enveloped him. For the first time in years, he felt uncertain, vulnerable, painfully human. But beneath that vulnerability stirred something else, purpose, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Later, Tristan found himself in his study, the dim light casting long shadows across the room. His phone rested on the table beside an untouched glass of scotch. He had promised Leo he would figure something out, but even as those words left his lips, he hadn't known what they truly meant. Now, boy's voice echoed in his mind, quietly hopeful yet desperate, an echo he couldn't silence. He wasn't. Greetings once again from our channel. We pray that your day is filled with the grace of Christ. We invite you to watch this video all the way through and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest messages of faith and prophecy. In a world increasingly marked by social unrest, natural disasters, and spiritual confusion, a powerful and urgent message has emerged, delivered through the maternal voice of the Virgin Mary. This prophecy serves as a wake-up call for individuals, families, and nations, urging a deep and sincere preparation for what lies ahead. This divine warning emphasizes the critical need for repentance, spiritual renewal, and a return to the fundamental principles of Catholicism. According to the prophecy, 8 nations, France, Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, Ecuador, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti, are at the forefront of an impending crisis. However, these predicted disasters are not merely random natural occurrences. They are intrinsically tied to humanity. Tristan hesitated for a moment, then pushed open the door. Inside, the air buzzed with the quiet hum of activity. Volunteers moved about, distributing meals and helping residents settle in for the night. His presence drew a few curious glances, but most people were too preoccupied to pay him much attention. A woman approached him, her expression kind but cautious. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Leo Santos," Tristan replied, his voice steady despite the unease twisting in his stomach. The woman's eyes softened. "Leo, of course. He's in the back. I'll take you to him." Tristan followed her through the shelter, past rows of bunk beds crammed together and groups of children playing quietly with donated toys. The place was orderly, but it was clear they were operating beyond capacity. Beds were squeezed into every available space, and the air carried the faint smell of disinfectant mingled with the heaviness of too many lives packed into too small a room. Finally, they stopped in front of. "What did you think I'd look like?" Leo shrugged his thin shoulders slightly. "I don't know. Bigger maybe. Meaner." Despite himself, Tristan let out a short laugh, the sound foreign even to his own ears. "Well, I guess I should be flattered that I'm not as scary as you imagined." Leo gave a small smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. He glanced down at his hands, fidgeting with a loose thread on his sleeve. "You're really him though, right? Tristan Ellis, the guy from Mum's Stories." Tristan hesitated, the weight of the question pressing down on him. "Yes," he admitted, "but I don't know if I'm the man your mum told you about." Leo nodded slowly, as if processing the answer. "She said you were busy all the time, that you worked a lot and didn't have room for other stuff." Tristan felt the words like a jab to the ribs. Helena had always been honest, and hearing her thoughts echoed in Leo's voice was harder than he expected. "She wasn't wrong," he said quietly, "but that doesn't mean." Un enfoque estoico hacia los celos fomenta la gratitud. Cuando te sientas tentado a sentir envidia, enfócate en apreciar lo que tienes y trabaja en tu propio crecimiento en lugar de obsesionarte con lo que poseen los demás. Esto se alinea con el principio estoico de centrarse en lo que podemos controlar, en lugar de desperdiciar energía en cosas fuera de nuestro alcance. Si te encuentras con alguien impulsado por los celos, el enfoque estoico es responder con empatía y comprensión, reconociendo que estos sentimientos a menudo surgen de la inseguridad o la insatisfacción con su propia vida. Al encarnar la generosidad y la no competitividad, podrías inspirarlos a reconsiderar su enfoque hacia la vida y la felicidad. Finalmente, cuando se trata de la falta de empatía, el estoicismo tiene una enseñanza profunda. Imagina a alguien que parece completamente desconectado de las emociones de los demás, ya sea ignorándolas como irrelevantes o pasándolas por alto por completo. Esta falta de empatía. He had thought he'd left that part of his life behind, but now it felt as though he had failed them both in ways he couldn't fully grasp. "Did she ever try to contact me?" he asked, his voice quieter than he intended. Leo shook his head. "I don't think so. She said you had your own life and she didn't want to interfere." Tristan closed his eyes, the ache in his chest deepening. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to truly feel the magnitude of what he had missed, and what he might yet gain. Ask Explain through the worn pages of a battered comic book, Leo looked up as Tristan entered the room. His expression was guarded but curious, like he was trying to solve a puzzle without all the pieces. "They're setting up the test," Tristan said, sitting down in the chair by the window. "It'll take a few days." Leo nodded, his fingers still gripping the edge of the comic. "Okay." Tristan studied him for a moment, unsure how to bridge the gap between them. "What are?" They shared meals, though Leo picked at his food carefully, and Tristan tried not to notice how thin he still looked. It wasn't easy. Leo was polite but guarded, his trust clearly hard-earned. And Tristan, in turn, struggled to navigate the unfamiliar territory of fatherhood. He had spent his life mastering boardrooms and negotiations, but sitting across from a 10-year-old boy, trying to figure out how to make him smile, felt like the hardest challenge he'd ever faced. One evening, as they sat outside on a bench, Leo broke the silence. "Do you think the test will say yes?" Tristan glanced at him, startled by the question. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. But does it really matter? Leo frowned. It doesn't? Tristan hesitated, then shook his head. Even if it says no, you still called me. That means something. Leo looked down at his hands, his voice barely above a whisper. I just didn't want to feel alone anymore. Tristan's chest tightened. He reached out, resting a hand on Elle. A Virgin Mary's latest message, delivered with profound urgency, has sent a clear call for action to the residents and visitors of southern Italy, particularly those near the ever-active Mount Vesuvius. Her message is not only a warning, but a plea, urgent and dire. The famed volcano, which has erupted catastrophically in the past, is showing signs that require immediate attention and preparation. The Virgin Mary, in her loving yet intense maternal tone, urges both physical and spiritual readiness as a possible disaster looms. Her message is distinctively urgent and potent, urging the faithful to take her words to heart. While the world watches the seismic activity around Vesuvius, the Virgin Mary's appeal transcends mere physical danger. She emphasizes that true protection lies in both worldly preparedness and unwavering spiritual commitment. Her words are not only a call to ensure the safety of one's body, but to fortify one's soul with faith and prayer. Throughout history, the Virgi want to mess it up. Tristan closed his eyes, a pang of regret slicing through him. Helena's pride and independence had been two of the things he admired most about her. But now, they felt like a barrier that had kept him from knowing the truth, until it was almost too late. He turned back to Leo, forcing himself to meet the boy's eyes. She was a remarkable woman, he said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. I'm sorry I wasn't there for her, for you. Leo didn't say anything for a moment, but his expression softened. She didn't blame you. She always said I got my stubbornness from you, though. Tristan couldn't help but smile, though it was tinged with sadness. She might have been right about that. The call from the lab came the next morning. Tristan had been sitting by the window in the shelter's small common room, staring out at the street below, when his phone buzzed. He answered quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. Mr. Ellis, the voice on the other end said, we have the results from. Because you called, he said simply. And because you're my son. Leo studied him for a moment, then nodded. I'm glad you did. Tristan smiled, a warmth spreading through him that he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, he began to believe that they could build something real, something worth holding on to. As the city lights twinkled outside the window, father and son sat together, their bonds still fragile, but growing stronger with each passing day. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't always be easy. But for the first time in a long time, Tristan felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Despite these strides, the balance remained delicate. Tristan's business demanded attention, and the habits of a lifetime weren't easy to break. Despite his best intentions, there were nights when he stayed too late at the office or answered one too many emails during their time together. He convinced himself it was temporary, that once he caught up on his workload, he'd be more present. But because you called, he said simply, and because you're my son. Leo studied him for a moment, then nodded. I'm glad you did. Tristan smiled, a warmth spreading through him that he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, he began to believe that they could build something real, something worth holding on to. As the city lights twinkled outside the window, father and son sat together, their bonds still fragile, but growing stronger with each passing day. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't always be easy, but for the first time in a long time, Tristan felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Despite these strides, the balance remained delicate. Tristan's business demanded attention, and the habits of a lifetime weren't easy to break. Despite his best intentions, there were nights when he stayed too late at the office or answered one too many emails during their time together. He convinced himself it was temporary, that once he caught up on his workload, he'd be more present. But at the crossroads of his life, Tristan faced a choice. Continue juggling his demanding career and newfound role as a father, or take the path that Helena, Leo's mother, never had the chance to walk. The next morning, with resolve hardening in his chest, Tristan made a call to his board of directors. By the end of the week, he had announced his decision to step down from his position as CEO. The business world was stunned. For Tristan, however, it wasn't a loss, it was a gain. Time, focus, and the opportunity to be the father Leo deserved outweighed any title or accolade. Adjusting to this new chapter wasn't easy. Without the relentless demands of his company, Tristan often found himself at loose ends. But Leo became his anchor, pulling him into a world he had long ignored. Together, they explored the city, built intricate Lego sets, and experimented with recipes in the kitchen, though their culinary adventures frequently ended in laughter and charred edges. One evening, as they sat side by, pero al dar un paso atrás, ganamos perspectiva y podemos discernir si una relación es realmente nutritiva o solo algo a lo que nos aferramos por costumbre o culpa. Si alguien en tu vida ignora tus límites, te agota constantemente o te hace sentir insignificante, date permiso para crear espacio. No se trata de resentimiento ni odio. Es hacer espacio para relaciones que nutran y respeten quién eres. No estás obligado a mantener a todos en tu círculo íntimo. Las personas que realmente te quieren honrarán tu necesidad de paz, y aquellos que no lo hagan nunca debieron estar tan cerca en primer lugar. Una estrategia poderosa para navegar estas situaciones es mantener la compostura y erguirte con dignidad, encarnando una auténtica fortaleza interior. Frente al desprecio, nuestro instinto natural puede ser encogernos, desviar la mirada o reaccionar impulsivamente. Pero imagina el poder de hacer lo contrario, al mantenerte firme, con la cabeza en alto y sosteniendo la mirada con confianza. ¿Cómo? Es una verdad difícil de aceptar, pero en nuestras vidas hay personas que encuentran placer en causar daño y sembrar caos. Imagina compartir momentos con alguien, confiar plenamente en ellos, solo para descubrir más tarde que son la fuente de tu sufrimiento. Es una revelación escalofriante, pero no es infrecuente. Hoy profundizaremos en un tema inquietante pero crucial: cómo identificar a las personas tóxicas, ya sea en el trabajo, entre amigos o incluso dentro de la familia. Estas personas suelen ocultar su verdadera naturaleza tras una fachada encantadora y carismática, lo que dificulta verlas por lo que realmente son. Sin embargo, entender sus señales puede cambiar tu vida. Los estoicos nos enseñaron la importancia de percibir con claridad y vivir guiados por la razón y la virtud. Al aprender a identificar estos comportamientos dañinos, podemos proteger nuestra paz mental y cultivar relaciones más saludables. Vivir alineado con los principios estoicos, sabiduría, autodominio y pensa. Yet Leo became his anchor, pulling him into a world he'd long ignored. Together, they explored the city, built Lego sets, and experimented with recipes in the kitchen, though their culinary attempts usually ended in laughter and charred edges. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Leo turned to Tristan, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think Mum would be proud of us?" Tristan's chest tightened at the question. He took a deep breath before answering. "I think she'd be very proud of you," he said softly. "And I hope she'd be proud of me too." Leo nodded, his gaze distant. "She used to talk about helping other people. She said we should always try to give back, no matter how little we had." Tristan considered the boy's words, a spark of inspiration forming in his mind. "What if we did something to honor her?" he asked. "Something to help kids like you, kids who need a safe place to grow up." Leo's eyes lit up. "Like a shelter." It began with a phone call and grew into something far greater, a bond that transcended time, mistakes, and loss. For Leo, he found not just a father, but a partner in honoring his mother's memory. And for Tristan, he discovered that true success isn't measured by wealth or power, but by the relationships we nurture and the legacy we leave behind. It's a powerful reminder that it's never too late to take responsibility, show up, and create something meaningful out of life's unexpected moments. If this story inspired you, remember, second chances are always within reach. Embrace them, build from them, and watch as lives, including your own, are transformed. Ask, explain. 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 Explain.